Hey everybody, it's ShadowStar here for my ranking of Series 6 of Modern Doctor Who. So, going into Series 6, I honestly didn't appreciate it as much as I do now. I used to have mixed feelings on most of the other episodes in Series 6 besides the really plot-focused ones. And it's still kind of true, but I think I've gained a bigger appreciation for most of the episodes in this season, which is great. I think I've appreciated this season a lot more on a rewatch, so let's start it off. We got 11 stories, and let's start off with one of my absolute least favorite stories, Night Terrors. Not as bad as I remember it though, but still easily the weakest of the season. It's just annoying and cringy. I know some people think it's supposed to be creepy. I just find it annoying. I don't like... There's something about the whole child aspect of this story that I just do not like. There's something about it. But yeah, also not to mention there's child acting in the episode, which brings it down. Also, this episode is just remarkably similar to Fear Her, but worse. It's like, got some child acting, something scary in a closet, a suburban area where we're talking to people, parents who are idiots. Honestly, yeah, this episode is just annoying and troublesome to watch, and I'm glad until I did this rewatch, I hadn't seen this episode in ages. It's one I almost always skip if I can. This is going to be a bit of a surprise to see this one low, and again, I'm not trying to attack it for being overrated, but the Doctor's wife, it just doesn't stand out compared to the rest of the season. Now, it still has good points, but I don't care for the whole TARDIS being a human thing, and when it comes to Amy and Rory, it's one of those episodes where Amy and Rory get pushed to the side, and they're great characters, and they spend time running around the TARDIS. You would think exploring the rest of the TARDIS would be such a cool idea, but we mostly just spend our time running around in circles through different corridors, constantly having tricks after tricks after tricks, and, it just keeps getting annoying, all the traps and tricks and stuff, I don't know, I feel like they could have done more with it. That being said, this episode does introduce one fact into the lore. This is the first TV episode to fully confirm that Time Lords can change gender, although it'd been slightly hinted at before. But yeah, I know some people like this episode and like the interaction with the TARDIS, and other than the line where she says, "I always take you where you need to go," I've never been that fond of this episode. She's an okay character, and I wish they didn't push Amy and Rory aside so much. Now, it's Curse of the Black Spot, a pirate episode, and honestly, it's just a nice, average episode. Amongst all the chaos in this season, this is a nice one, because I feel like it's not as deep and heavy as some of the later ones, it's not a plot-focused one, it's just a nice average episode, and sometimes you need that, especially after the opening and what's gonna come later. It's a nice pirate episode, you get to have some nice moments with Amy, and there's a few good moments here and there, and in the end, there kind of isn't truly a villain. So, it's an interesting little story, and that's all it really is. Alright, it's the Rebel Flesh and the Almost People. One I definitely enjoyed much more on my recent rewatch, but it still has some problems. I feel like there are times when you get confused. I know it's supposed to be confusing, but I feel like I get confused a bit more than I need to. Because at first you think there's two of them, then there's three of that girl. Then that girl turns out to be very, very annoying. And I know she's supposed to be vulnerable at the beginning, but first she just becomes annoying, then she just becomes evil. I do like Rory in this episode, of course. Get used to me saying that. I'm always going to be praising him throughout the series, but this is truly the Rory season. But yeah, he has some great moments, and I do like the whole concept of, who's really real. I mean, yes, one of them is literally real, because, what is the difference? There's surely some differences between gangers and non-gangers, although given that we can have a ganger disguise itself as Amy through the whole season, I guess they've got to be able to be almost the same thing, but still. But yeah, it's an interesting concept how we get to have some gangers survive and some non-survive, and obviously the two Doctors swapping places is a nice little twist that keeps you going the whole way. So, I enjoy the little concept. This season, when it comes to its other episodes, has cool concepts that sometimes dwindle because we waltz around the same set a bit too long. I don't like when we stand in the same set that looks very similar and dull a lot. And that's the one problem I have with this episode. Speaking of a similar episode, it's A Girl Who Waited. Another episode where this one went by fast. It's got a cool concept, obviously, And, it's once again a case of we've got doubles and who's truly the real person. Like, they're both Amy, and they're both our Amy. It's just one's lived longer and lived a different life, but she's still the same Amy with the same memories. It's very similar in that respect. And we waltz around the same set a lot. But it's an interesting concept. It kind of reminds me of World Enough in Time, where we've got time dilation and people waiting a very long time. It's a lot like that. World Enough in Time would later do what this episode did, but take it in a different direction. I love that. But anyway, yeah, I enjoyed this episode. You're going to hear me say this a lot. I enjoyed this episode a lot more on my rewatch as well. I think it's a great episode for Amy. I like the idea that, Rory really got shoved to the side in Series 5. I feel like Series 6 gives Rory more time to shine and makes it more about Rory. Rory has to choose which Amy to have. Rory is the one getting attention in the Ganger episode. I like that. But yeah. Moving on to our sixth position, it's closing time. So, closing time, it's the Craig episode, and I know some people dislike this episode. I don't mind it. People hate the line, "Oh, I blew the Cybermen up with love," but really, it's blowing them up with an intense emotion, not love specifically. That would make sense. We've seen that done before. Even in The Next Doctor, she was able to overcome the Cybermen with powerful emotions. So it makes sense once again. If you're really emotional in the time of conversion, you can overpower them. And again, after a climactic episode before and a climactic episode after it, you need a light-hearted episode like this before the ending. So I quite enjoy it. There is a few little plot holes with the timing, though. Not necessarily this episode's fault, but this episode supposedly takes place before they go to Lake Silencio, but he bumps into the present-day Amy and Rory, which doesn't make sense because Lake Silencio takes place at the beginning of the season with a different Amy and Rory, which doesn't make sense. How is their timelines working out? Whatever. But yeah, it's a nice little episode that leads into the finale, but also gets to be lighthearted. Anyway, let's get into the top 5. The God Complex. An episode I, again, didn't like at first, but I loved it here. Again, it's got a cool idea where it focuses on both fears, but also faith. Not just religious faith, but faith as a concept, and I really like that. And again, I like when we tease teeny mysteries about the Doctor. Because we know he has a room, and even though we one day find out what's in his room, what we never find out is when Amy points out, if he has a room, clearly he has a faith. We know he has to, because Rory doesn't have any type of faith, therefore he never has a room and he's shown the exit. So the Doctor must have some kind of faith, and I like that we keep it mysterious and you don't truly know. Kind of reminds me of Satan Pit when it questions what the Doctor believes in. But yeah, it's another one we've got. I like it. It's another one with a nice, cool concept. This season's got a lot of episodes with really cool concepts, like time dilation or the fears and all that, or the gangers. I like how we take cool concepts and don't just make it a standard generic villain and episode and so on. Series 6 really love to do that. Some people find it messy. I really love these cool concepts. So yeah, and I actually found most of the characters to be more enjoyable on my rewatch. Alright, let's get into the top 4. You're gonna notice a pattern here. But let's start off with the finale, Wedding of River Song. I can understand some people think it's a bit messy, and I think some people agree that it focuses a bit too much on River and doesn't have a, quote, true villain, since although it's kind of got a villain in the background, since you've got the Silence in the Kavarian chapter, but we don't really find out why their villain is till later on. But again, that's kind of what Moffat era does, is it kind of leaves things going in the long game. But still, I think it's a great episode. There's a lot of good Rory moments, there's a lot of good Amy moments, it manages to bring a lot of stuff back. It's truly the River episode, there's a lot of good River episode stuff in this episode. All in all, it's one of the better episodes. Let's not forget that this episode also has some amazing Rory moments where he fends off the Silence even though they're attacking him. And of course, it features the part where we find out that the Brigadier has died. That's something where, when I first saw this episode years ago, it didn't matter to me. This time, it's a scene that actually does get me a little teary-eyed. The music and that subtle moment where he finds out, it's just a soft, deep moment, especially for such a monumental character in the classic series. honestly, that is one of the highlight scenes that I think a lot of people forget is in this episode. So yeah, can't forget the death of the Brigadier. One of the most memorable moments of this episode. Gets you choked up thinking about it, especially if you're a classic fan. Oh, and Rory's great in this episode too. But another one people don't like, but I do, episode 3, well, not episode 3, in third place we have Let's Kill Hitler. Okay, the one complaint is that Mel's completely comes out of nowhere, and it would have been nice if she was in an earlier episode. I agree there. The rest, though, lots of great at River acting, and another really good episode for Rory. Come on, Rory has so many good lines in this episode. There's moments like the riding the motorbike, punching out Hitler, lots of good rhetorical statements going back towards Amy and other characters. Of course, River has this really amazing line when she confronts the Nazis. I understand some people think it was in bad taste to put Hitler in an episode and make it mostly comical, but I actually quite enjoyed that aspect. Honestly, I just think Rory is so good in this episode. Yes, I know it's also the River episode, and the music is also good too. All the River-themed music is really good too. So yeah, love this episode, and it introduces the Tesselector, adds more to the mystery. It's kind of an episode where we learn more, the Doctor learns more than we already knew. But still, like you said, you can sense a pattern. What I loved about this season is this season very much had usually the plots have kind of been in the background and then it's in the finale. Here, this season had a very ongoing thread, an actual plot through the whole season. Not literally in every episode, but it's always kind of there. Still, moving on. The opening, Impossible Astronaut and Data Moon. I absolutely love this opening. A lot of good Rory moments in this episode. I love the fact that he gets to have a conversation with River. Rory's just got so many good moments. Or that bit where, they're talking to NASA. The fight with the Silent is great. It's just a great opening. Going to America. The crazy opening. It's you want to open up a season. Since, usually seasons have begun with reintroducing a new companion or a Doctor. Since this episode doesn't really have to reintroduce a new character or companion, it throws us in the deep end and says, right, all your characters are back, or all your characters you love are back, River's back, and then crazy plot twist with the Doctor seemingly being dead and all that stuff. So, everything goes on in this episode. It really just sets in motion all the mysteries you're going to have. It's the River season, and this is the episode that sets it up. And then, of course, it ends with the little girl regenerating. There's that scene where, they're running away at the beginning of episode 2. This episode is non-stop, really good pacing, and it's just an incredibly well done. This is something that you would think would feel almost like a finale, and yet it's an opening two-parter. That's a way to open a season. It's one of the things I absolutely love about Series 6. And finally, in first place, is A Good Man Goes to War. I was originally thinking of putting the opening in first place, but I think this one's better. There's so many good lines. One of the best lines in this episode is when the Doctor says, "Good men don't need rules. Today is not the day to find out why I have so many." That's a good line. It's the introduction of Strax, Vastra and Jenny, which they kind of come out of nowhere, but I like it because Moffat really plays into the idea that the Doctor has off-screen adventures a lot more than previous episodes, so I like that. There's a lot of good Doctor scenes in this episode. You really get to see the fury of the Doctor, but also, in the end, the enemies are one step ahead of him at every point. There's lots of good Rory moments. He gets, that opening with Rory storming the Cybermen, we used to Rory being the, kind of one pushed aside, or Rory being the one made fun of. But here, Rory gets to be a freaking badass and, storming the Cybermen in that moment. It's oh man, now I feel like this is the Arthur Darville I know. Oh man, like I said, the Series 6 is the season of praising Rory, okay? Can you tell I've got a bias going? But still, what's not to love about A Good Man Goes to War? And of course, obviously, it's got the mystery of River unveiled. We finally get that mystery unveiled, and that moment is just absolutely superb. The music in that moment is brilliant. There's just so much in this episode. It's a perfect halfway mark of the season. This season was really well constructed when I look at it. Like, those, you could tell I love the core part of this season when all the episodes that truly pertain to the river plot are in my top 4. And even the episode, that's the thing, prior to my rewatch, I used to overlook Series 6 and go, okay, all the non-river episodes aren't that great. But honestly, yeah, I think most of them have got cool content. Almost all of them have got cool concepts. Some of them might be a little weak, but even when the ones are a bit weaker and boring, they've got cool concepts, like the gangers, or the time dilation, or the god complex. Those have cool concepts. Then you got really heavy story-focused stuff. So, after setting alight a more average series like Series 5, Series 6 really gets to be experimental. Alright, next up, I have to review Series 7, and like Series 6, I have no idea what I feel about it going into it. It's a very tricky, I have no idea what I'm going to rank everything, and it's a very season that's literally split down the middle, so it'll be fun to try and rank it as one definitive season, but we'll worry about that next time. Anyway, I will see you next time for more Doctor Who reviews and other things as well. See you next time, guys.